The crackle of lightning split the sky as Flora Linden clutched her battered valise, mud splattering her hem as she trudged toward the stagecoach that would take her away from Silverwater Creek forever. She had survived 2 years in this dusty Wyoming town, but after tonight, she couldn't bear to stay another day. "Miss Flora," the station master called over the drumming rain, his gray mustache drooping beneath his slicker. "Coach is running late on account of the weather." "Might be dawn before it arrives," Flora nodded grimly, rainwater streaming down her face. She had no choice but to wait. Her teaching position was forfeit, her reputation in tatters, and the thought of facing the town's whispers tomorrow was unbearable. "You're welcome to wait inside," the man offered, gesturing to the small depot office. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson." Flora followed him inside, setting her case beside a bench. The small stove in the corner provided little warmth against the chill that had settled in her bones. She removed her soaked bonnet, attempting to salvage what remained of her once neat appearance. Outside, the storm intensified, battering the windows with fierce determination that matched the tumult in her heart. Just yesterday, she had been the respected schoolteacher, engaged to the town banker's son. Now she was a woman fleeing scandal, all because she had dared to stand up for what was right. Miles away at the Diamond Z Ranch, Cole Zimmerman stared out the window of his ranch house, watching the storm pummel the land. At 32, he had built something substantial from nothing, a thriving cattle operation that employed a dozen men. Yet on nights like these, the emptiness of the large house mocked him. "Boss!" The door burst open as Hank, his foreman, stumbled in dripping water everywhere. "Just got word from town Miss Linden's waiting at the station to leave on tonight's coach." Cole turned sharply. "What? Why would she be leaving?" There was some kind of ruckus at the town meeting, something about her defending those half-Indian children against Barton's accusations. Got mighty ugly, they say. Barton's boy broke off their engagement right there in front of everyone. Cole's jaw tightened. He'd always admired the schoolteacher's spirit from afar, though their interactions had been limited to polite nods when passing on the street or brief conversations at community events. "And nobody stood up for her?" Cole asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Hank shifted uncomfortably. "Well, boss, you know how folks get when Barton starts throwing his weight around." Without another word, Cole grabbed his slicker and hat. "Tell the men I'll be back when I'm back. But the creek's probably flooding." "You can't possibly." The door slammed shut, cutting off Hank's protest. Minutes later, Cole was on his stallion, Thunder, racing through the driving rain toward town. Flora dozed fitfully on the hard bench, startling awake at every crash of thunder. The station clock showed nearly 4 in the morning. No word yet on when the stage might arrive. Mr. Peterson snored softly in his chair, his ledger open on his lap. Flora envied his ability to find peace. Her mind kept replaying the humiliation of the previous evening standing before the town council, pleading the case for the mixed heritage children to be allowed in the school, only to be shouted down by Edward Barton, the town's wealthiest businessman. "No daughter of mine will associate with such people," Timothy Barton had declared, throwing her engagement ring at her feet. "Choose, Flora, your misguided principles or your future with me." She had made her choice without hesitation, though it cost her everything. The door banged open, startling both Flora and Mr. Peterson awake. A tall figure filled the doorway, water streaming from his duster and hat. "Miss Linden," came the deep voice she recognized immediately, though they had rarely spoken. "Mr. Zimmerman," she acknowledged, straightening her posture despite her bedraggled appearance. Cole Zimmerman removed his hat, revealing dark hair plastered to his forehead. His blue eyes assessed her carefully. "I heard you're planning to leave town." "News travels fast, even in a storm," Flora replied, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Some news shouldn't be traveling at all," he said, crossing the room to stand before her. "You shouldn't be going anywhere." Flora felt a flush creep up her neck despite her exhaustion. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Zimmerman, but my position here has become Untenable. Because you stood up for children who deserved an education. His directness caught her off guard. That's not something to run from, Miss Linden. I'm not running, she protested, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. I'm simply acknowledging reality. Without a position or prospects, I cannot remain. Cole glanced at the station master, who was pretending not to listen. Mr. Peterson, might I have a private word with Miss Linden? The older man nodded, grabbing his raincoat. I'll just check on things outside, he mumbled, slipping out the door. Once alone, Cole sat beside Flora on the bench, careful to maintain a respectful distance. I've been watching you since you came to town 2 years ago, he said quietly. The way you care for every child regardless of their background, the way you stand your ground when others would yield. Flora stared at her hands, folded tightly in her lap. A lot of good it's done me. It's done plenty of good for those children, Cole countered. And it's shown the true character of Timothy Barton, which seems like a blessing in disguise if you ask me. Despite herself, Flora let out a small laugh. Are you suggesting I should be grateful for public humiliation? I'm suggesting, Cole said carefully, that running away in the middle of the night during a storm isn't the answer. Silverwater Creek needs you, those children need you. The school board has made their position clear. I'm dismissed. The school board can be persuaded to reconsider, Cole said, a determined glint in his eye. Especially when presented with an alternative source of funding for the school. Flora looked up sharply. What are you saying, Mr. Zimmerman? I'm saying that the Diamond Z is willing to sponsor the school under the condition that all children are welcome and that you remain as teacher. Flora's heart pounded in her chest. That's incredibly generous, but why would you do this? We've barely spoken in 2 years. Cole took a deep breath. Sometimes a man doesn't need words to know what's in his heart. I've respected you from afar, Miss Linden. Your dedication, your compassion, your courage. I wouldn't presume to have earned your affection, but I won't stand by and let this town lose its finest citizen because of small-minded prejudice. The earnestness in his eyes made Flora catch her breath. For 2 years, she had barely noticed the quiet rancher who tipped his hat to her on Sundays. Now, seeing the determination in his face, she wondered how she could have been so blind. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say you'll stay, he replied simply. At least until the storm passes and you can make a decision with a clear mind. You can take shelter at my ranch. My housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins, is always there. Your reputation would be safe. Before Flora could answer, the door flew open again. Mr. Peterson looked distressed. Bad news, I'm afraid. Bridge over Sawmill Creek washed out. No stage coming through for at least 3 days. Cole stood. It seems the decision has been made for you, Miss Linden, at least for tonight. Flora looked from Cole to her valise and back again. Something about his steady presence calmed the panic that had been her companion since the previous evening. Perhaps this was not an ending, but a beginning. Very well, Mr. Zimmerman. I accept your offer of shelter for tonight. The journey to Diamond Z Ranch was arduous. Cole had brought an extra horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, but the rain made the trails treacherous. Flora clung to the saddle horn, grateful for the oilskin coat Cole had insisted she wear over her already drenched clothing. By the time they approached the ranch, the sky had lightened to a gloomy gray dawn. Flora's first glimpse of the sprawling 2-story house with its wide porch surprised her. Somehow, she had imagined Cole Zimmerman living in a modest cabin, not this impressive homestead. It's beautiful, she murmured as they approached. Built it myself with help from my men, Cole replied, a hint of pride in his voice. Started with just the center portion 5 years ago, added on as the ranch grew. The door opened before they reached it, revealing a plump woman in her 50s with a concerned expression. Land sakes, Mr. Zimmerman, what on earth were you thinking riding out in that deluge? And Miss Linden? You poor dear, you're soaked through. Mrs. Wilkins, prepare a hot bath and some dry clothes for Miss Linden, Cole instructed, helping Flora dismount. She'll be staying with us for a few days. The housekeeper's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "I'll see to it right away. Come in before you catch your death." Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, with polished wood floors and simple but handsome furniture. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, a cheerful fire already burning. "Jose will take care of the horses," Cole said, removing his drenched coat. "Mrs. Wilkins will show you upstairs. I imagine you're exhausted." Flora nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman, for everything." His eyes held hers for a moment. "Cole, please call me Cole." "Then I'm Flora," she replied softly. After a hot bath and dressed in borrowed clothes that Mrs. Wilkins had somehow managed to adjust to fit her smaller frame, Flora felt almost human again. She ventured downstairs to find Cole at a large table, maps and ledgers spread before him. "Please don't let me interrupt your work," she said, hesitating at the bottom of the stairs. Cole stood immediately. "You're not interrupting. I was just reviewing the spring grazing plans. Are you hungry? Mrs. Wilkins always keeps something warm on the stove." "I am, actually," Flora admitted, realizing she hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch. Over a simple but delicious meal of biscuits and beef stew, they talked more freely than they ever had in town. Cole told her about building his ranch from nothing after arriving in Wyoming in 1870, with little more than determination and experience from working cattle drives in Texas. "And you, Flora, what brought you to Silverwater Creek?" he asked. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. "My parents died of influenza when I was 20. I had training as a teacher but few prospects in Pennsylvania. When I saw the advertisement for a school teacher out west, it seemed like Providence." "And was it? Providence, I mean?" Flora considered the question carefully. "Until yesterday, I would have said yes. I loved teaching those children, watching them grow and learn, but now—" She trailed off, uncertain. "Now you have a choice," Cole said quietly. "Run away or stand your ground and fight for what you believe in." "It's not that simple," Flora protested. "The town council can be reasoned with," Cole interrupted. "Barton has influence because of his money, but he's not the only voice that matters." "And what about Timothy?" Flora asked, her cheeks coloring slightly. "It would be awkward, to say the least." Cole's expression darkened. "Any man who would publicly humiliate the woman he claimed to love doesn't deserve your concern." "I didn't love him," Flora admitted suddenly, surprising herself with her candor. "I respected him and I thought we would make a suitable match, but love, no." Something shifted in Cole's gaze at her words. Then perhaps his true colors showing is indeed a blessing. The storm continued through the day and into the following night, keeping Flora at the ranch. Mrs. Wilkins fussed over her, lending her more clothes and insisting she rest. But by the second day, Flora found herself restless. When she discovered a small library off the main room filled with books on every subject, she was delighted. "Feel free to read anything that interests you," Cole said, finding her running her fingers along the spines. "Books are my one indulgence." "Mine as well," Flora replied with a genuine smile, "though I never expected to find such a collection on a cattle ranch." "There's a lot about me you might find surprising," Cole said, his voice warm. Over the next 2 days, as the rain finally subsided and the land began to dry, Flora found herself increasingly drawn to this quiet, thoughtful man who had come after her in the storm. They spent evenings by the fire discussing books, ideas, and hopes. During the day, when Cole tended to ranch business, Flora helped Mrs. Wilkins or explored the house and nearby grounds. On the morning of the 4th day, Cole found her sitting on the porch, gazing toward town. "The bridge should be passable by now," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Yes, I suppose it is," Flora agreed, surprised by the reluctance she felt at the thought of leaving. "I've been thinking," Cole said, his voice careful, "about a solution to your situation." Flora turned to face him. "Oh, I meant what I said about funding the school. I've already written to the town council, but I was thinking, perhaps there's a way to silence the gossips entirely." Flora's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" Cole took a deep breath. A respectable married woman would be beyond reproach as a teacher. Even Barton couldn't object without seeming petty. For a moment, Flora couldn't speak. "Are you proposing marriage, Mr. Zimmerman?" "Cole," he reminded her gently. "And yes, I am, though not for the reason you might think." "Enlighten me, then," Flora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've admired you from the moment you arrived in town," Cole admitted. "Your kindness, your intelligence, your spirit. I never spoke up because you seemed content with your engagement to Timothy. But now—" He met her eyes directly. "I'm not offering marriage merely to solve a problem, Flora. I'm offering it because I believe we could build something real together, something based on mutual respect and shared values." "And love?" Flora asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Cole's expression softened. "I already care for you more than I thought possible. As for love, I believe that can grow, if given the chance." Flora looked out over the land that stretched before them, rolling hills dotted with cattle, the mountains in the distance. In just a few days, this place had begun to feel more like home than anywhere she'd been since her parents died. "This is very sudden," she said finally. "I know," Cole acknowledged. "And I don't expect an immediate answer. Take all the time you need. Whatever you decide, my offer to support the school stands." Flora studied his face, the strong jawline, the kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. In town, she had barely noticed him. Now she couldn't imagine not seeing him every day. "I don't need more time," she said, her decision crystallizing. "Yes, Cole Zimmerman, I will marry you." The joy that transformed his face made her heart skip. "You're sure?" "Not about everything," she admitted with a small laugh. "But about this?" "Yes, I'm sure." They were married 3 days later by the circuit judge who happened to be passing through. The ceremony was simple, held in the parlor of the Diamond Z with Mrs. Wilkins and a few of Cole's most trusted ranch hands as witnesses. Flora wore a pale blue dress that Mrs. Wilkins had altered from one found in a trunk in the attic. "It was my sister's," the housekeeper had explained. "Never worn. She was about your size before consumption took her." Cole couldn't take his eyes off his bride, his usually stoic expression replaced by undisguised happiness. When the judge pronounced them man and wife, he kissed her with a tenderness that made Flora's knees weak. The following Sunday, they rode into town together to attend church services. Flora's arm was tucked into her husband's as they walked up the steps of the small white chapel. The whispers and stares followed them, but Flora held her head high. Edward Barton and his son were standing near the entrance. Timothy's face contorted with shock when he saw Flora on Cole's arm. "Miss Linden," he said stiffly, deliberately ignoring their clearly married state. "Mrs. Zimmerman now," Cole corrected, his voice pleasant but firm. Timothy's face flushed dark red. "How convenient, and how quickly you found a replacement." Before Flora could respond, Cole stepped forward slightly. "I'd watch your words carefully when speaking about my wife, Barton." The older Barton put a restraining hand on his son's arm. "Come along, Timothy. This is neither the time nor place." Inside the church, Reverend Davis welcomed them warmly. "I understand congratulations are in order," he said, "though I confess I'm disappointed not to have performed the ceremony myself. Perhaps you'll bless our union today, Reverend." Cole suggested. "We'd be honored," the preacher beamed. Of course, before the service begins." And so, before the entire town, Reverend Davis blessed their marriage. As they took their seats afterward, Flora caught sight of several of her former students waving excitedly at her. The children from the half-Shoshone families sat in the back with their parents, their smiles wide when they saw her. After the service, Cole stopped to speak with several members of the town council while Flora found herself surrounded by well-wishers, including many parents of her students. "Will you be returning as teacher, Mrs. Zimmerman?" asked Mrs. Gardner, whose daughter Emily had been one of Flora's brightest pupils. "I hope to," Flora replied, "if the council will have me back." "Oh, I think they will," Mrs. Gardner said with a knowing smile. "Especially after Mr. Zimmerman's generous offer." Later that evening, over supper at the ranch, Cole confirmed what Flora had suspected. It's settled. The council has agreed to reopen the school with you as teacher, and all children will be welcome regardless of heritage. Flora could hardly contain her joy. How did you convince them? Cole smiled. Money talks, but so does common sense. I simply pointed out that educated children make for a stronger community and that turning away potential students was both morally wrong and economically foolish. And Barton? He objected, of course. But when faced with the choice between accepting my offer or raising taxes to fund the school, the other council members overruled him. Cole reached across the table to take her hand. You'll start again next Monday if that suits you. Flora squeezed his hand, tears of happiness threatening to spill. It suits me perfectly. That night, as they lay together in the large four-poster bed that was now theirs, Cole traced the outline of Flora's face in the moonlight that spilled through the window. Are you happy? He asked softly. Flora pressed closer to him, savoring the warmth of his body against hers. Their wedding night had been a revelation, gentle yet passionate, with Cole proving himself a considerate and attentive lover. Happier than I ever thought possible, she answered truthfully. When I tried to leave town that night, I thought my life was ending. I never imagined it was just beginning. Cole kissed her softly. When I rode after you in that storm, I had no plan beyond stopping you from leaving. I couldn't bear the thought of never seeing you again. I'm glad you came after me, Flora whispered against his lips. I'm glad you brought me home. You're home with me now, Cole murmured. Always. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Flora reopened the school, welcoming all children regardless of background. The town gradually accepted the new arrangement, though the Bartons remained coldly distant. Cole expanded the Diamond Z, adding more cattle and hiring additional hands. Each evening he returned home to Flora, their dinners filled with conversation about their respective days. As spring turned to summer, Flora discovered she was with child. When she shared the news with Cole, his joy was boundless. He lifted her in his arms, spinning her around their bedroom until they were both dizzy with laughter. A baby, he said in wonder, placing a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. Our baby. Are you pleased? Flora asked, though his reaction had made the answer obvious. Beyond pleased, he assured her, kissing her deeply. I never dared hope for so much happiness. Word of Flora's condition spread quickly through town, as such news inevitably does. Most offered congratulations, but Timothy Barton could not resist a barbed comment when he encountered Flora outside the mercantile one afternoon. Wasted no time, did you? He said nastily. One has to wonder if your hasty marriage was due to necessity rather than choice. Flora, 5 months along and clearly showing, drew herself up to her full height. My marriage is none of your concern, Timothy. But since you seem confused about timing, I'll clarify this child was conceived well after our wedding. Now, if you'll excuse me. She brushed past him, head held high. That evening, when she recounted the encounter to Cole, his eyes darkened dangerously. That man needs to learn respect, he said, his voice tight with anger. Flora placed a calming hand on his arm. He's not worth your concern. Besides, living well is the best revenge, isn't it? And we are living very well indeed. Cole's expression softened as he placed his hand over the swell of their child. That we are, my love. That we are. In December of 1883, Flora gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Clara Rose. Cole paced outside their bedroom during her labor, nearly wearing a path in the floorboards until Mrs. Wilkins finally called him in to meet his daughter. The sight of Flora holding their tiny, pink-faced daughter undid him completely. Tears streamed unashamed down his face as he sat beside them on the bed, one large finger gently stroking the infant's cheek. She's perfect, he whispered. Just like her mother. Flora smiled tiredly. She has your eyes, I think. As winter settled over Wyoming, the little family grew closer. Cole arranged for a young woman from town to assist with teaching so Flora could spend more time with Clara. In the evenings, They would sit before the fire, Flora nursing the baby while Cole read aloud from one of their favorite books. When spring arrived, bringing with it the first anniversary of their hasty marriage, Cole surprised Flora with a small, intimate gathering of friends to celebrate properly. "I want to do this right," he told her. "Last year we married in haste. This year let's celebrate with intention." Under an arbor he had built himself, decorated with early spring wildflowers, Cole and Flora renewed their vows before Reverend Davis and their closest friends. Clara, now 4 months old, watched from Mrs. Wilkins' arms, occasionally cooing as if in approval. "When you tried to leave town that night," Cole said as part of his vows, "I knew I had to follow you. Riding through that storm was the best decision I ever made because it led me to us." "You told me I was home with you," Flora replied, her voice thick with emotion. "And you were right." "You are my home, Cole Zimmerman. You and Clara and the life we're building together." As twilight settled over the Diamond Z Ranch, the guests departed, leaving the family alone. Cole carried Clara to her cradle, tucking her in with a tenderness that still amazed Flora. Then he returned to his wife, taking her in his arms beneath the star-filled sky. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Zimmerman," he whispered against her hair. "Happy anniversary," she replied, raising her face for his kiss. "Thank you for chasing after me in the rain," Cole smiled against her lips. "I'd chase you through fire and flood, my love, always and forever." And as they stood together under the vast Wyoming sky, Flora knew with absolute certainty that the storm that had once threatened to wash away her future had instead delivered her exactly where she belonged, home, with the man who had braved the tempest to bring her back. Years later, when their children asked how they had come to be married, Cole would always begin the story the same way. "Your mother tried to leave town in the rain. I rode after her and told her, 'You're home with me.'" And Flora would smile, knowing that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most perfect destinations.